Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Horns Report on KXAN Plus. I'm your host Billy Gates, and there was a pretty interesting ball game on Saturday for the Texas Longhorns. 16-13 in overtime, a victory over Kentucky at Kroger Field in Lexington caused the Longhorns to drop a spot in the AP rankings from number 21 to 22. But here to talk about it was one of the men on the radio call, Roger Wallace here, KXAN Sports Director. And Roger, I guess you could call it interesting, right? It was just a historically brutal game offensively for the Longhorns. From a total yardage perspective, the worst performance in the Steve Sarkisian era. But as they say, a win's a win, right?
Yeah, that if they go in there at 6-0 and escape, everybody's, feeling a little bit differently.
Yeah,
but when you go in there with two losses and offense has been the issue, then you don't have much to celebrate if you're Longhorn fans. At least that's kind of the feel I get. But, it was a struggle. Sark addressed it after the game. He addressed it Monday at his news conference, said he's got to do a better job. We'll get more into that. But, it's just, when you just thought maybe with the Oklahoma game they'd figure some things out, especially running the football. Defense, they figured a lot of things out. Now, they gave up yardage to Kentucky, but they had some great stands at the goal line. One on the first drive of the game by Kentucky, not on the goal line, but in the scoring position, of course, in the overtime. But the offense is what everyone's talking about. They can't figure it out. Arch Manning really struggled after being so solid against Oklahoma. The upside is they haven't turned it over for two straight ball games. The downside is they had one touchdown drive, and it was a 5-yard drive after a Ryan Niblett punt return, their first touchdown of the ball game.
Yeah, just a tough watch. If you're a Texas fan, you kind of think you go in there, you have a feeling, especially coming off the Oklahoma game, you have a feeling that you've got things under control, that you've got all the kinks ironed out, coming up against a team that's been struggling to stop people, and then they almost blew it. He came really close to losing on the road in the SEC, and I know there's all everything that goes with playing in the SEC. Every game is tough, that sort of thing, which is true. But at the same point, from a fan perspective, you have to think you should be able to take care of Kentucky with relative ease. But clearly, the Wildcats are up to the task.
Yeah, and I'll push back a little bit because if they win 27-24,
right,
I think there's a different feel. There's just something about doing it when the offensive side is struggles more than the defensive side.
Yeah.
Aggies win 45-42 in regulation.
Right.
Yeah, they had trouble on defense, but high-flying offense, so explosive, everyone's all fired up. So I think it's just because that side of the ball and your head coach is an offensive guy is what has everyone frustrated, and it's been recurring, right? Mm-hmm. It's been a problem since Ohio State back on August 30th, and it hasn't really been fixed in any of their Power 4 games or now conference games, the last 3 conference ball games.
179 yards of offense for Texas in a win, like we've been saying, 16-13, a win's a win, right? Their 179 total offense yardage is the worst offensive output in the Sarkisian era. Previously, in 2022, the worst was 199 yards against TCU, and that was a 17-10 loss. So, I mean, imagine having your worst offensive performance yet still getting a win, and that's certainly on the backs of just a great defense that was out there forever. Kentucky had the ball for 39 minutes and 23 seconds. That's almost twice as long as Texas had it.
Yeah, I mean, every number seemed to go against Texas if you just looked at the box score, except the fact that they had a couple of big punt returns. Mm-hmm. Mason Shipley was nails. Jack Bomeister did a good job. They set up that near safety with a great punt that pinned Kentucky back, and so that led to the short punt, the big return, the Wisner touchdown. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, again, you kind of felt being there. It was a lot like that Kentucky crowd, the Florida crowd, rather, where you could kind of sense that the Florida crowd was ready to turn on Billy Napier, but Florida kind of forced them not to because they won the ball game. Kentucky crowd, I think they did turn on Mark Stoops, and they didn't like the decision. They didn't like the fact that they couldn't get the first down on fourth down in the first quarter. I think they punted the ball away once late. That Kentucky fans were upset they didn't make a better effort of scoring. But anyway, it was. That's a fan base that's frustrated. He's the most tenured coach in the SEC, but he seems to have a ceiling at Kentucky, and now they're sitting there winless in SEC play, and they got to find 3 wins just to get to a bowl game, let alone have a winning record. So different frustrated fan bases, but you're right. The one here, offense is a struggle. Sark knows it, thinks he can fix it to some extent. We'll see on Saturday what they do against a Mississippi State team that's had their share of struggles on defense. But I bought that last week with Kentucky's rush defense giving up a bunch of yards, and it looked like either a different group or Texas was just that inept on offense to move the ball on the ground.
And speaking of rushing, 47 yards on 28 carries, the 1 touchdown from Wisner from 5 yards out. But, I mean, certainly wasn't the same Quintravion Wisner that we saw against Oklahoma, that's for sure. 12 carries, 37 yards. Arch Manning, 11 carries, a lot of those scrambles. -1 total yards for him, had a long of 14. I mean, we could talk about the struggles of the offense, until we're blue in the face, but it's got to start with that offensive line, right? I mean, that they're missing Connor Stroh, Cole Hudson, just trying to piece something together up front, Roger. It's been a tough road for him.
Yeah, and it looked like against Oklahoma that maybe they'd found a little bit of rhythm and ran the ball much better than they had. 136 yards rushing, Wisner over 90 yards, kept Arch clean. None of those things happened against Kentucky, and there's something to be said for playing at home, and Kentucky probably played a little faster at home than you do on the road. I know that sounds absurd, but watch the Oklahoma game for Texas and watch the Kentucky game, and I think there's something to be said for all that. But the offensive line, whether there were some protection breakdowns, Sark faulted himself on some play calls, said, I've got to do a better job of putting guys in the right position to succeed. And then what happens, I think, is Arch starts to see some ghosts maybe, and that's why he rushes some throws and maybe needs to throw the off-speed pitch when he throws the fastball.
Yeah.
And as Sark would say on Monday, take some layups when you have them. And he wasn't moving up and throwing it quite as confidently as he did against Oklahoma. Made some plays. They converted some 3rd and longs to DeAndre Moore. Now, the one that was the 2nd and long that they got 9 on was the one that allowed Kentucky to stay in the game, and that's when Moore. Now, his momentum was going to be he was going to have to slide, he was sliding into third base, and that would have been a heads-up play. But, that was a play where he doesn't get the first down. He goes out of bounds, preserves a timeout. Arch doesn't get the 3rd down. They kick it. They give Kentucky time to tie it up.
Yeah, and Steve mentioned the 3rd down issues in his press conference Monday, saying that they actually converted 3rd and long pretty well. Like, they were 5 of 16 total on 3rd down, but I think 3 of those conversions were of the 3rd and long variety. So what like when you put yourself in that low percentage conversion situation and still get those, I mean, man, you really think 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, you should get those ones too. So another reason why the offense wasn't on the field all that much.
Yeah, and you got to sometimes win some battles up front. You just got to beat your man and give your run. And that was the big difference with, obviously, because of the yardage. But watch that OU game, and Trey Wisner had some cutback lanes. Mm-hmm. He had a push where he could make a decision, make a move. Here, he was just fighting to get something. And then that first down play, Sark blamed himself for that in overtime. Yep. Where they run that stretch. And I don't know, is that what we're going to hear about? Or
we're going to hear about. We'll hear about the first play in overtime. Yeah,
I'll let him explain.
Okay,
it better than me.
Yeah, we'll play this short bite first of just Sark just expressing his own disappointment in himself for the play calling and things like that. Because he's always a real critic of himself after games. Like he goes through the tape and tries to figure out what he can do better. So we'll hear a little bit from him, and then we'll get into that overtime play that we've been talking about. So here's Steve Sarkisian.
At the end of the day, offensively, I've got to do a better job. I've got to do a better job putting all of our players in position to be successful, and that's blocking people, that's throwing the ball to open people, that's running routes precisely where they need to be. So that's on nobody but me, and so that's when you can look in the mirror first and say, okay, I'm responsible to try to get this fixed and get better at it. I'm very comfortable with that. So
yeah, he said he's comfortable with sitting down next day with the tape, having a look at it, going over what he called. And then just kind of going through his own sort of list of like what he could have done. And I know, second guessing yourself is, that's what it is. Hindsight's 2020. But it seems like that he does a pretty thorough job of that sort of like that day after sort of evaluation.
Yeah, it's like Steve Sarkisian, the head coach, meets with Steve Sarkisian,
the OC,
the offensive coordinator. All right, what'd you see? Well, me. And it's he was asked about giving up play calling duties by Anwar Richardson from Orange Bloods, and he said no. That's why they hired me. So and he addressed that, and he wasn't terribly defensive about it, and it was coined in you have so many responsibilities, and now seemingly more with the way this game has evolved. Is that something you would relinquish? And he said that's why they hired me, and so I'm gonna keep doing it for that reason.
Mm-hmm. And this first play in overtime that we'd referenced earlier ended up being a no gain. It was kind of an outside run to Wisner. Sort of got strung out by the Kentucky defense pretty well. They kept containment, didn't let Wisner kind of cut back against the grain or anything. Ended up getting backed up due to a holding call on Brandon Baker. And typically, you look at the guy who made the holding call, like, it's Baker's fault. Sarkisian sort of flipped that script, and then he took the blame for that in sort of a roundabout kind of way. So here's Steve explaining that. So here he is.
Look in the mirror first, and I think a lot of times, human nature would say, hey, we have a great offensive game that I don't critique myself. There's never a game that I don't come out of where I think, I probably would have called something different here. Or something different there. And this game was no different. One of the plays that I'm probably more upset about myself with is the first play of overtime. We get a holding penalty on Brandon Baker, but I didn't need to risk that holding penalty predicated off of them not scoring it on their session. And I didn't call a direct run, which is really what I should have done in that instance. I went a little more game plan mode. I felt like we had an opportunity to create an explosive play, but that put stress on Brandon. And that style that we called has an opportunity to be a negative type run. And so that was not a very good call in the game at all.
So yeah, he was mad at himself about not calling a more sort of between the tackles kind of downhill run, instead going with a finesse sort of off tackle run to the outside to try to break a cutback lane or something like that. And even with the penalty, would have went for no gain because Wisner got pulled down right at the 25 there. But it's just one of those things where kind of whatever the Texas offense was trying to do, Kentucky always seemed to kind of have an answer for it.
I was fascinated listening to that, and it's it's kind of deep in the weeds of football, but talking about being transparent, I mean, he was detailed on why he was mad at himself.
Right.
And if you remember, I think it was Oklahoma game, they ran that play, and I think they got holding penalties on 2 different occasions on that because you run it to the outside, so all of a sudden your offensive lineman might have defenders that they're trying to, if they don't get a clean block on them, they start reaching and things like that. Yeah. So that was some pretty detailed information about that call, and what can't happen in overtime when all you need is anything to win. Well, you can't turn it over, you can't miss a field goal or not score a touchdown when you try, or you can't back yourself up.
Can't have a big penalty like that. Yeah.
So all of a sudden it's at the 35, still within Shipley's range, but boy, you'd like to make it a little bit more comfortable if you're the offense, and they only got back about 4 yards from there. So I did think that was interesting that he could have been much more vague about a call and kind of opened up the curtain a little bit there on some offensive X's and O's.
Right, and it's pretty weird winning the game after a 4-play negative 2-yard drive.
Yeah, well, it's weird when you're only scoring touchdown drives 3 three-play
5-yard
drive.
drive.
And there's a review in the end zone for a fumble.
Yeah. Oh man, just a weird game. Speaking of special teams, as we said, Mason Shipley hits the game-winning field goal. He's been great this season. I mean, I think a lot of folks thought he would be too. 11 for 13 on the year, 3 for 3 against the Wildcats. Hits from 53, 39, and then the game winner from 45. The kid from Liberty Hill, started his career at Oklahoma State. Didn't get a ton of time there. Went to Texas State. Was on the Lou Groza semifinal award list. Boots a 60-yard field goal. He was perfect, I think, his sophomore year or junior year there at Texas State. So you kind of knew Mason Shipley was going to come in and make an impact, right?
No doubt.
Yeah.
And, all field goals aren't created equal. And the 39-yarder is to, give him the lead. And at the time, you thought, okay, maybe they're going to win the ball game on this. And then obviously the next one is to win it. You certainly don't want to turn around and go to a second overtime.
Right.
And give them some life. So, yeah, big time there. Now he's kicking off with Will Stone leaving the team. Yeah. And anytime they returned it, they didn't get to the 25, or right to the 25. So, essentially the same as a touchback. Yeah. So, yeah, he's handled it. Jack Bomeister has done a great job punting. He was the holder on those kicks. And then Lance St. Louis is the snapper, the old 3 phases. I love the reaction if you watch over he and Bomeister. It's just a handshake. There's no jumping into each other's and things like that.
Yeah.
And then when you hear him after the game, you go, okay, I get it. Resting pulse of about 40, it sounded like with Shipley.
You got to have ice water in your veins. Too high, too low. But speaking of special teams, Jeff Banks has to feel like he's at the top of the world right now, right? With how well the punt return unit is doing. Ryan Niblett seems like whenever the ball's in his hands, good stuff happens. You've got Jack Bomeister who's turning himself into one of the premier punters in the country this season. Obviously, Mason Shipley. So Jeff Banks has to be feeling pretty good at this point.
He does. I think he'd like a little more production out of his. He got a lot of tight ends.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
What we saw early from Jack Endries, we haven't really seen duplicated. Now there's more that comes into play with that than just him. But he was kind of the linchpin of that five-man tight end room. They made some plays. Jordan Washington had that little screen. Went for 25 yards, but you're right. And Niblett is fearless, and it has paid off. That second punt return, he had the gunner right in his face, and the gunner has to slow down because he doesn't want to interfere. But then if Niblett escapes him at all, he's got no chance with that quickness. But what a weapon, and they've needed it.
Yeah, they've definitely. I mean, that's kind of what kind of propelled them to the Red River rivalry win, like that punt return by Niblett. That was sort of like the backbreaker for Texas against Oklahoma there. So, it's set to let's move to defense. The other phase that has kind of saved Texas throughout the season. Anthony Hill Jr., he's just an animal. 8 solo tackles, 12 total. Michael Taft, 10 total tackles, 5 solo. Jelani McDonald, all 9 of his tackles were solo tackles. Yeah. As a DB, you expect to have those solo tackles, but he just all over the field. He had 2 tackles for loss, and we can't forget about old Colin Simmons, who says he wants to break the sack record. Well, if he has more games like this, then maybe he'll get close. 3 sacks, all of those, obviously, his tackles for loss, a forced fumble, 4 total tackles. He was I believe one of the co-defensive players of the week in the SEC this week. When you're out on the field for almost 40 minutes, I guess you're supposed to rack up these kind of stats. But this defense, again, Roger, showing why a lot of people preseason thought they'd be one of the best units of the country.
No doubt. And they're special in the way they can keep teams off the scoreboard and give up some yardage. But they've done a great job of keeping teams out of the end zone, forcing field goals, getting stops on 4th down. And then the overtime stand was amazing when you give up 22 yards on the first play to Kendrick Law. And Sark pointed out Jalen Gilbo made a play to prevent him from getting into the end zone and then giving the defense a chance. But, and they just run players and players and players in and out. And, there's a method to the madness. One, you want to get guys ready. But in the 4th quarter and overtime, you got some fresher legs from guys that have just been out there seemingly all night long because of the way that game unfolded. With the time of possession. But, yeah, those front guys, Travis Shaw's really emerged, Brad Spence, has really emerged the last couple of games. Cole Brevard, we could go on and on.
Yeah.
Leonga Lafau was one of the keys, if not the key, on that fourth down stop at the goal line. So Malik Muhammad gets a sack on a corner blitz, so it's a second DB that's had a sack in as many weeks. So doing it from a lot of different angles.
Yeah, and that's the mark of a good defense. And yeah, let's see, Kentucky ran 86 plays. 86 plays to Texas's 55. That is just hard to comprehend.
And I would contend four of their best defensive plays were 83, 84, 85, and 86.
Yeah, right?
They had first and goal from the 2-yard line and couldn't punch it in.
Kentucky fumbled 4 times, didn't lose any of them. That's
hard to do.
That's a bit of an oddity, right? That's crazy.
And one was going to be a scoop and score,
right?
With Anthony Hill.
Yeah,
he just. I don't know if the ball, it was kind of a mad scramble, but it looked like maybe the ball was touched, but if not, he just kind of whiffed rather than falling on it.
And I know I'm laughing a lot, but I just can't help but laugh. Like, look at these numbers and just kind of reflect on how the game went and just like, how on earth did they get this done? But it was great special teams and timely defense, a great goal line stand there in overtime, and having a weapon like Mason Shipley who can give you 3 points pretty much whenever you need it. His only misses are from 55 and 56, and he hit the upright on the 55-yarder there at the Cotton Bowl. So, man, like it's what good teams do, right? They just find ways to win. They win ugly, and this would certainly qualify as an ugly win.
Yeah, and now you got one more on this stretch, and then
you
don't come home and exhale. You come home and you take on potentially a top 10 team,
right?
In Vanderbilt, but at least you're back home. And if you can somehow get through Mississippi State, they're about a 7.5 point favorite,
something like that. Yeah.
Mississippi State I think they're a little more explosive on offense than Kentucky. Maybe a little more leaky on defense, although Kentucky wasn't great against the run until they faced Texas in the SEC.
Yeah.
Blake Shapen, he's seen Longhorns in multiple uniforms.
That guy's been in school for 10 years.
Mississippi State, of course, Baylor. Brennan Thompson, their second leading receiver, started his career at Texas. He had the game winner in that Arizona State game when all of a sudden they were thinking, all right, here we go with Jeff Lebby. We got something going. Then they've lost all of their conference games. I mean, what a tough way to lose to Florida, although Florida kind of let them back in the game on Saturday, but then they're in field goal range, and he throws a pick to a 350-pound defensive tackle. Yeah,
and let's dive into Mississippi State a little bit here. Like you've said, the fourth consecutive game away from DKR. We don't call it a fourth consecutive road game because the Red River game was a neutral site technically, but it was away from home, and they've been on the road for the better part of a month and a half now, including a bye week, that sort of thing. But it seems like Mississippi State, last year they struggled so much that they were just injured, and their depth just wasn't where it needed to be to play in the SEC competitively. With Blake Shapen was out for most of the season, but you get a good quarterback in there like Shapen, who Texas folks have seen in a Baylor jersey and a Mississippi State. It just seems like he's as Blake Shapen goes, so do the Bulldogs.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And they run that up-tempo Jeff Lebby, from the Art Briles tree. And so it's going to look a little bit like Oklahoma. They're going to race to the line of scrimmage, especially after a first down, where Kentucky was a little more content to play a little bit slower pace. And so this is where, you can get defenses on the heels. And the key is when you give up a big play, that's when they turn it into that NASCAR offense. And so, and you're going to have, a crowd that wants to see Texas for the first time as a conference rival. It seems like every time they go somewhere this year now, the third true road game in the SEC, and they've been excited to have Texas there, and that'll get them fired up because they're beaten up a little bit mentally. They have to be after their loss to Florida on Saturday. So it's going to be another test, I think, for this Texas defense. And then right now everything's a test for the offense. They got to figure something out, but if they can unlock something again, that's where you go, okay, now you've got the defense, you got the special teams, but Arch Manning needs some confidence, and he needs it early in the ballgame. They have not scored anything in the first quarter in their Power 4 games. Yeah, so we'll see what they can do against this Mississippi State team. They're 3 consecutive losses here, lose their SEC opener, to Tennessee
41-34, so competitive there. Lose to A&M 31-9, not so competitive there. And then, like we've said, the loss to Florida 23-21. Blake Shapen's been averaging about 220 passing yards a game, so as long as he stays in there for the Bulldogs, Jeff Lebby's got a shot. Roger, as far as this offense for Texas is concerned, I mean, you say that Arch has to get going early. It seemed like in that Oklahoma game, they were able to get him going early. You have to think that Sarkisian is going to go to that screen game, that short passing game, to unlock him, right? You'd think so.
You would think. And he hinted on Monday that you might see some different things offensively.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
They run a trick play on third down. It blows up in their face. That stalls a drive. They run a trick play against Oklahoma, and they were a wingo touch pass away from a Jack Endries walk-in touchdown. Or was that Florida?
That was Florida.
Yeah, that was Florida.
That was Florida.
That's a game changer.
Yeah.
So he's always going to have something in his bag, but you got to find a way. And who am I to tell Sark what to call?
Sure. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
But I think Sark sits in his office going, all right, maybe we call fewer and we find what works. And I think you can tell a lot from Arch just watching early on and how he looks. He looked really comfortable and calm against Oklahoma, which you would think of all the games, maybe other than Ohio State, that might be the one. But he's a kind of a pitching analogy. He's kind of a max effort thrower.
Yeah.
And so I think Sark to see him not always be max effort when you have to dump it down or put a little bit of air under it, take something off it, things like that. But they got to figure something out to get defense on their heels, to move the ball, and my goodness, to get their offense some rest.
Seriously,
because they can't keep defending nearly 90 plays and having to play in overtime and expect them to keep making the plays. But again, I was really interested to see what was going to happen at Kentucky because of what happened with OU. Now, it wasn't what I thought it would be.
Sure.
Maybe they'll surprise me again because obviously right now you're thinking, okay, we're 7 games in. This offense is what it is.
Right.
We'll see. We'll see if it isn't.
Yeah, we'll see what they can do against the Bulldogs there at Davis Wade Stadium in Starkville, Mississippi. That's a 3:15 start on the SEC network. So the
networks were waiting to see which game they were going to show at 3:15 compared to the 2:30 game. I think Texas's offense sent them to the SEC network.
Yeah, to the deep depths of the SEC network, the deep cavern of cable television. And so we'll have all sorts of coverage on that all week. KXAN.com on air. We'll give you Texas Game Day 2:15 on Saturday.
They'll go at 2.
Or they'll go at 2. You're right. Yeah.
We like round numbers in television.
Sure. Yeah, there's 3:15 stuff. That's like what is this? Is this the Atlanta Braves on TBS?
I will say that means real world problems with the radio pregame show does not adjust.
Right.
So we get to go an hour and 15 minutes on our radio pregame. But
let's fill some time,
it's a
Roger.
different medium.
You and Craig can do that.
We can do it.
All right. Well, we'll end this episode of the Horns Report here. Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it. For Roger Wallace, I'm Billy Gates, and we'll talk to you again very soon.